this conversation is going to be about the work you are doing in the borderlands, your weaving work, artwork, and which I think it's very important, and also because it also give us the chance or open the opportunity to talk about the situation that the borderlands are going through. Okay.
Sounds good.
So I'm gonna start sharing the video about your work. Yeah.
Will I get to see it too?
Yeah. You will see it there. Yeah, at the same time. Okay. So yeah, I'm gonna share the video so people can like see more about what is your work about, and yeah, that is just to start, to make them, to let them know more about the work you are doing right now. And after the video is finished, then we will start. Okay.
Sounds good.
Maxi Adler is a great artist and activist from Tucson, Arizona, whose artwork goes beyond borders. She comes very often to the border wall between Mexico and USA to weave and to bring a different energy to this place. She has walked the desert and she has collected fabric from the clothes left behind by people trying to cross to the other side of the border. She has used those pieces of fabric to weave bigger pieces that she later hangs on the border wall as a homage to people who have lost their lives and also to the families that have lost their loved ones in the borderlands. She has also been a persistent voice to let us know about the situation that the borderlands are going through, because besides the loss of people, which is sorrowful already, these lands are losing a significant amount of water plus animal and plant species due to the border wall building. Amazing woman, artist, activist, and person, Maxi Adler.
It's structures like these, like the one behind me, that have pushed thousands of people to their deaths. Over 8,000 bodies have been found in the borderlands, in these beautiful deserts. And we haven't done a single thing to collectively mourn that, to grieve that fact, to process the loss that the borderlands has seen, the loss of human life, the loss of species, the loss of families, the loss of childhood. And I started this project because I didn't even know how to process any of that. I didn't know what to do. And I just thought I could spend some time using what was left behind to help start weaving some compassion into this place.
This was an introduction of the work you are currently doing there, and the conversation is for you to let us know a little bit more about it. So I don't know if you want to add something about you before I ask you the first question.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for putting that video together. I have a very hard time introducing myself. So that video was great. And I'm super honored that you invited me to be in conversation today. And yeah, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Maxi.
I'm
It's really
touched.
nice to see you, and it's really nice that you accepted our invitation for joining this festival. You are the last guest, and that's like closing. I don't know how do you say that in English, but in Spanish we say like closing con broche de oro, like golden, like when you
Oh,
close.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah.
no in English, but I like that.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you about the weaving. How did you get, or how did you start getting into weaving? Was it in school? Was it because of your family? Was it because another influence? Can you let us know more about it?
Yeah. So when I was in college, I was feeling sort of like outside pressure to uh, study something that others decided was applicable in life, like science or math, or, you know, all of my parents were really strict that I did that. And so I started taking a few art classes, but nothing too much. And um, it was very serendipitous one day. A weaver, an artist, came into a painting class I was in, and she started talking about weaving and textiles and fiber. And I've always been a very tactile person, and painting was not doing it for me. My instructor yelled at me a lot for painting with my hands. And so the moment this other professor started talking to me about weaving, I was just like, that's it. That's exactly how I want to create. So I took my first course, and it felt like I had like three hands all of a sudden. It was like I found this missing limb. It was just such a serendipitous thing that happened in my life. I didn't take my first art class until senior year of high school, because it just wasn't. I'd taken like other small classes, but I didn't really feel like supported as an artist until very late in life. And
It's a good time to start.
yeah, yeah, it was. All just kind of fell into place.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you
again,
started
we.
in a good age.
Mhm.
We already said in the video that your weaving, the one that you are doing right now in the borderlands, are a kind of homage to these people that have lost their lives in the desert, and also to the families that have lost their relatives. They're trying to cross to the other side. But can you tell us more about what's like your purpose? What are your feelings when you are weaving right in the border? And yeah, please.
Yeah. So in the borderlands, there's a lot of organizations that spend time out in the desert, leaving water and food for migrants. They study the trails and try to leave water and food in areas that are seeing a lot of traffic. And the hope is to save even one life. And they're out every single day. It's like leaving little needles in a haystack, hoping it will help someone. And so when I started going out in the desert with them, in the process of leaving food and water, we would find sort of these like it's almost like abandoned homes, these areas where there clearly had been human presence. Blankets were left, or children's toys, or they had discarded jackets or pants. And the borderlands immediately becomes this sort of mystery. You don't know exactly what these people have been through when you're finding what they've left behind, but your mind goes to really dark places because of the reality, which is that thousands of people have died in the desert or have disappeared entirely. The climate of the desert makes it so that if somebody is to die in the desert, within 2 weeks, they're their body is gone. Animals have scattered it, or if it's in the dead of the summer where it's 110 degrees Fahrenheit, the sun has destroyed it, and there really isn't there's small efforts, but there needs to be a larger effort to identify these people and be able to communicate with their families, because now there's all these families that don't even know what's happened to their loved ones. So it's this whole narrative that's just been erased. There's not very many people that talk about it. People that aren't in the borderlands have no idea that it's happening. So when I was out with these groups and I came across these sort of abandoned homes, I was like just stunned, like how we're just going to leave this stuff here, or no one else is going to see this. Like, we're hundreds of miles into the desert. It's not there is no way for most people to be aware that this is happening. And so I started collecting it and really wanted to have some way to honor these people's journey and what they're going through. And so when construction of the border wall began in Arizona, well, really when it began in Texas, when they started building this sort of destructive monument as well as symbol of the terrors that are happening in the borderland. You know, the border wall is destructive within itself, but it's also extremely symbolic of everything else that's happening as it relates to immigration and people seeking asylum and just all of the trauma that's inflicted in the borderlands. So as the wall was going up, I wanted to be present to witness it, but also to be building something of my own, building or weaving these things back together, or doing something that is bringing a bit more of restoration to these lands, and honoring the people and the lives that have been lost, because there's not a lot of space for that right now. It's a lot of focus on destruction and what we're losing, and that's a lot to emotionally bear witness to. And I wanted to, start doing something that was my own way of processing all of this.
It is a way to transform energy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's a beautiful way to look at it.
Yeah, you have had a really hard time walking the desert and finding these remains that have been left in the desert, and also witnessing the destruction, as you said. It's a really, really hard information or experience to process, right? So what you're doing through the weaving is transforming this energy and, as you said, bringing a different spirit to what they are distracting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting because every time I would go to the border wall to weave, Border Patrol agents and construction workers would kick me out. Like, you can't be here, you can't do this here, making me feel like I'm in the wrong, like I'm doing something wrong, which is so completely not the case. Like, they are in the wrong. They don't even recognize the harm that they're doing. So it was always a really interesting dynamic. I was extremely unwelcome in these spaces.
But legally, you have research that you are not doing anything wrong. I mean, they couldn't do anything legal, like against you, right?
Technically, no. The borderlands have their own, the borderlands have their own sets of laws that seem to be different than the rest of the world. And in some case, they actually are just different than the rest of the United States, I should say. So And just in Arizona alone, 41 laws were waived in the borderlands to build the wall. So those are laws like the Endangered Species Act, or the Clean Water Act, or the Clean Air Act, or the Native Americans Graves and Act. So we have all of these laws that are meant to protect our environment, our lives as citizens of the United States, and in the borderlands, they don't exist. So everyone that lives in border communities don't actually get to experience the same protections that the rest of the United States gets to experience. And there's other examples of that are horrific, and people are just unaware of the rights that United States citizens lose in the borderlands that everywhere else in the nation people have. So while I'm in the borderlands, these agents think that they can just do anything, that they have sort of immunity, and that they view everything as a threat and as a danger. They've been told this really improper narrative of the borderlands. And so everything is something that's going to harm them. And it's so sad to talk to these people who have dehumanized everyone and everything, and feel like their lives are in danger, like you're threatening them. And it's a lot of brainwashing, honestly, of these agencies. And they have a false sense of authority in these areas. So they'll do anything that they can to get me to leave. But I do my best to stand my ground.
You have been a very persistent voice, because as I said, there is no like at least here that we are in the other side, in the other border, there is not much information, or it is not like spoken what is happening right there. I mean, a lot of people is from here is going there, and maybe a lot of them are still waiting in the border to cross one day. And maybe a lot of people from here too, they have gone to the desert and they have tried to cross, and but that's like from their experiences, and it stays like an isolated experience. Yeah, like it happened only to one person, and it is not like shared as a collective thing.
Totally, yeah. I agree with that, and I think the whole world's been fed a false narrative of what life is like, and really whose lives are at stake. The reality of the harms that are being inflicted, and yeah, I would just say, like, the reality too of how amazing the borderlands are. I mean, they're these like extraordinarily biodiverse, pristine areas of wilderness. And I think that's another big part, and I know you wanted to talk about that too, is like what's happening to the environment there. You know, right now, like literally today, there's areas of the borderland that are just being dynamited, just blown up. These crazy, beautiful, rugged mountains that no one could ever even attempt to cross. They're their own barrier. They're truly a border, and they're being blown up to build a wall across them. One that will probably, hopefully, not even be built, because we're now experiencing a transition of the administration. So just the amount of environmental destruction that's happening too, that can't be undone. You know, we can't dynamite a mountain. We can't return the groundwater back to the ground. You know, hundreds of thousands of gallons of groundwater were sucked up every single day to mix concrete for the wall. And all of the cacti and the saguaros that have been cut down and bulldozed, we can't get those things back. So there's a really, truly a scar that's being left on the land and to the communities that live there. But when people think of the border, they often think of nothing, as if no one lives there, or it's just sand. You know, they don't think about the animals that are migrating back and forth. They don't think about the communities that were built or have been there for time immemorial. The Tohono O'odham have been living across the border before there was even a border, and that's cut their entire community in half. So these are the narratives that and the stories we're trying to share with people, so they can really adjust the way that they think about our home.
Right now that you say that, are you doing any alliance with someone else, like to continue doing your work, or is it all by yourself?
No, I'm in coalitions of people. I'm working with grassroots organizers. There's not a ton of people doing this work, but I'm far from alone. Yeah, I'm far from alone. There's lots of amazing people that are fighting, especially in places like Texas, where these are people's actual homes that the government is trying to take away from them, so that the government owns the land and the government can build the wall. So there's tons of people whose, their entire lives are on the line, everything they've ever known, and they're tirelessly fighting.
That's really good to know. And I think your work is more meaningful, or that's what I think, that it's more meaningful, even more for the relationship you have to the desert, because you grew up there.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
So you have experienced like the change that is being inflicted there by this government that is trying to build that wall.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I've lived in Tucson my whole life. So you'd have to work really hard not to see the injustice that's happening. It's just so obvious in many ways. Yeah, it's hard.
And how is the rest of the community? Is there a community that even the ones that live close to the border or in the borderlands that are not aware of what is happening?
Well, especially with construction, a bunch of construction workers moved into these communities while they were working on the wall. So it'd be kind of hard to miss if all of a sudden all of these people came into your very small community and started living there so that they could travel easily to the construction site. But a lot of these, these communities, even prior to border walls, there's 1,000 things they've been fighting, and the militarization that comes with living in a border town. People that live in these communities can't leave their homes without going through a checkpoint where someone's interrogating them or wanting to search their car every day that they leave their house. Like, there's no escaping. And I think, I can't speak for everyone, but I do believe that everyone that lives in a border community is going to have their own very personal story about what it's meant for them to be living within militarization, to be living in a place where normal laws have been waived, to be living in a place where they're just being ignored. They're not even being asked, like, what do they want as the border community? What do they want to feel safe, to feel heard, to feel celebrated in their culture and in their community? And yeah, there's places like in Laredo, Texas, which is right on the border, and right now construction is going through their community, and they came out with this huge proposal or this campaign that said defund the wall and fund our community. I mean, the border wall, over $15 billion has been allocated to build this wall. And it's being built through communities that don't even have enough public schools, don't even have clean water and things that they actually need to be safe, and to be well resourced. And so a lot of communities are calling for that money to be reallocated to them, to them as community members, and not to this false sense of national security that's most people have been fed.
It's really important, the work that you are doing, especially because you're giving this sense of, well, you are showing or demonstrating that art is so wide. Yeah, there have been art has been present in a lot of protests along during the history, right? So this, what you are doing right now, is also a way to demand for justice, and yeah, for stopping that nonsense that they are proposing, right?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's so true. I mean, art is a huge part of this, and it's a way that you can speak to people that words simply don't work, in
Yeah.
situations where words don't work anymore. Like that community I was just talking about in Laredo, they made this giant mural on the street of their community that said, "Defund the wall, fund our future." And it's visualizations like that that just really stick with people and really get to spread far and wide. So yeah, I agree. It's just such a huge part of all resistance work.
Where do you see your work getting? Like, would you like to maybe once to, I don't know, because I know there are a lot of families that have not found their loved ones, yeah? So they're still waiting for seeing them once more, or like they are waiting for knowing, yeah, what happened with them. So have you thought about like doing something with them, or where have you pictured your project?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll be honest, I don't know yet. I think that having these opportunities to continue weaving and to continue making these long pieces, I would love to be at a point where I'm covering lots of sections of the wall, and it's hard because I can't leave them there. They'll just get torn down by the agents. So it's really like little quick installations, but I don't know. I really don't know what would be next regarding like a forever home for these pieces. But
Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful idea. Finding ways to connect with the families, and um, fortunately, there's tons of organizations that do exactly that. That are working directly with families that are looking for someone, that are doing DNA testing, that are really advocating for these families. So that's a really sweet idea.
Or maybe having them around when you are weaving. I think that would be also like meaningful and a kind of give some peace to their hearts. Yeah, I don't know. That's what I imagine, but yeah,
Oh,
as you said, as you said, you don't know yet. But it's really great what you are doing, and I really admire your work. I really I'm glad to be your friend and to, yeah, to know about your
I'm so
project.
happy to be your friend. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So my other question was that what would you say to these people that have not, maybe because they don't know, or maybe because they are into other things, um, they they don't know yet about what is happening in the borderlands, and not only in the north part, but also in our south border, we are also having a lot of problems. So what could you say to people in general, but especially to artists regarding this situation, especially to the ones that live close to the borders?
Um, Honestly, I would encourage people to really tell their story, tell the world what they see. I mean, the world can create all sorts of stories and ideas about what's happening. But if you are living on the border, whatever border it is. Tell people what it's like, film yourself talking, take pictures. Like, we really have to start communicating reality, what real life is like in these places, and humanizing it again. We have to really humanize these areas. I mean, the world has done everything in its power to either erase them or taint them as being these dangerous or horrible places, when the real danger is what the government is doing, in my opinion, not the danger of people that are trying to seek asylum, or of people migrating, but really telling the story of what it's like, and not looking away from it, not turning an eye to it. There's so many things going on in the world and lots to focus on, and it can feel like a lot, that's for sure, but I think the borderlands deserve for people to pay attention.
Thank you, Maxi. I will read to you some comments from people. Algún día Suni, she said that it is really interesting what you're doing. And Elias, he says it is a very interesting project. And Alfredo Cancino, he says congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, I think oh, I forgot what was the last question because I was reading the comments. But yeah, I want to say thank you for what you're doing and for sharing it with us and with the people that is watching, and that maybe they are not watching us right now, but maybe they will watch the video later. So this is like a way also to share what you're doing and what is happening, that situation. I remember the word, that the question, yeah, that how long do you take to weave a piece?
Well, the most recent piece I hung up, that one you showed in the video, that piece took me I started in September of last year, so just over a year. I think it took me so long for a lot of reasons, one of them being we're all in a pandemic, and so traveling back and forth became a little bit harder. And yeah, like I mentioned before, almost every time I go to weave, I get kicked out. So I get like this short window to just do it as quickly as I can before I'm sent away. So yeah, they're definitely prolonged pieces, and they've been, that single piece I've wove all across the borderlands, not just in one area. So there's memory within that as well.
Sure. Yeah, and that's why our talk is called Weaving Memory, right? Because it's a way to of remembrance. Do you say that? Yeah, of the people that have lost their lives there in that area. And I want to say thank you, Maxi. Thank you. Thanks a lot, because a lot of our people from here, they have gone there, they have crossed the desert, and they have experienced a really bad time trying to cross. Some of them have achieved it, some of them have not. And because of them, and on behalf of them, I want to say thank you, and also on behalf of the family.
Thank you so much.
And yeah, I think we are going to close our conversation. I don't know if you want to say or add something else. It was a pleasure to see you, and I'm sure the students are really happy to see you. Oh, because I didn't mention that, but yeah, Maxi was helping our students to practice their conversation last year, so they remember you, and I'm sure they are glad of watching you and hearing about your projects. So you are part of our community in some way.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so honored. Thank you all so much for for being in conversation with me and about this topic, and Edre, for all that you do. You inspire me so much. You're amazing for putting it all together. So thank you.
I'm glad that we got together in one point of our lives.
Me too.
Yeah. So yeah, I will encourage you to keep doing what you're doing and to keep us informed. And yeah, we are very glad to see what you're doing. We are very glad to share it, and also we are very glad to keep talking and discussing and reflecting with about this topic with our students and our community. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, send you my best. Thank you and goodbye. Goodbye, and thank you to everyone that was also writing in the chat. Thank you for joining us to this conversation. It was very nice to see that you are there. Thanks a lot. Bye.